Shabbos Daf Kuf Mem Ches. Today's email demonstrates tremendous camaraderie and achdus that we have within our shir. It comes from Binyamin Lapidus from Lakewood, who says that through an email that Lev, the individual is going through the Gerus process in South Africa, it gave him a tremendous hisayrus on his abulus hachurban on Tisha B'Av. Unbelievable. The Gemara tells us that according to Shmuel, he has a reverse gerus in our mission. In fact, if somebody breaks a bone on Shabbos, he could fix it on Shabbos. The Gemara tells us an amazing story. The Rabbi Bar Bechana, when he showed up to Rav Yehuda's city, he didn't go into Rav Yehuda's shir, and Rav Yehuda was upset, and he sent a gabbai to take away his coat, make sure that he comes. So he came to the shir, and as soon as he got to the shir, he heard Rav Yehuda say that if you have a broken bone, you don't fix it on Shabbos. Says Rabbi Bar Bechana, but we paskin that you do fix. Shmuel says you do fix. He says, look, Shmuel's from my city, and I never heard this halacha. Isn't it a good thing I took away your coat? Look at this halacha you just taught me. Rav Avia thought that since the halacha is not exactly like our mission, in fact that you could fix a broken bone, so he thought you could also fix and put back a dislocated arm or leg. And the Gemara says, you think it's one stitch? One part of the Mishnah is off, but the other part of the Mishnah remains. And with that we finish Perek Chavis. The following Perek is Perek Shayel. You're permitted to borrow wine and oil from a neighbor, provided that you use a lashon of hashileni. Hashileni means that it's a short-term loan and the person can come and take it anytime, and therefore you won't write down that he lent you the wine and oil. But if you say haliveni is a lashon of 30 days and out, and therefore people write it down. We're concerned he might write it down on Shabbos. If you're lending somebody wine and oil and you don't trust them, you could require a code, a mashkan, without saying it, and you do the cheshbon after Yantiv, and the same halacha is with a carbon Pesach. If you're stuck without a carbon Pesach, you could purchase one, so to speak, and give a coat, and you go and pay the guy after Yantiv. On Yantiv, if you can make a shinui, you can do it in a different way, so go ahead and do it differently. So for instance, the Gemara says, how come when a woman draws water from a well, she doesn't do a shinui? She doesn't use a larger pail, because a larger pail will mean it's heavier, it's more tircha on Yantiv. A smaller pail will require more trips. More trips is also a problem. To put some sort of beged on it, it might get wet, schita. To put a wooden cover on it, you might tie it or fall, so there's no way to do it. But otherwise, you have to make some sort of shinui. The Gemara tells us amazing on Shabbos and Yantiv, you're not allowed to clap your hands, you're not allowed to dance, you're not allowed to bang on your chest, not for a simcha and not for avelos. The Gemara says it's better that we don't tell people this halacha, so they should be a shagig and not a mazid. There's a Rav Moshe Feinstein that says perhaps today you can, and that's why today we don't do a macha. Similar to the halacha, if a woman or people are sitting next to the end of the mavoi where there's a lechi, we're concerned you shouldn't sit there because if you have something in your hand, it might fall out into Rosh Hashanah. You'll grab it, but you see people do, and we don't make a macha. The same thing with a da'iraisa that's not mefurish, like to add extra time to Yom Kippur before Yom Kippur goes in. You should start the fast earlier. Many people are not makbid on it. We don't tell them, but in a derais that's mefurish, you do make a macha. There's a halacha according to Hillel that you're not allowed to lend somebody saw b'sa. You can't give them wheat and say, give me back wheat, because what if the price goes up? The same thing would be for a loaf of bread, even though it's a very small item. What if the price of wheat goes up? You're doing ribbis. However, if the price is known, how much a loaf of bread costs, then you're permitted because you'll just demand the cash instead of the actual bread. According to Rav Yosef, anytime you lend somebody something on Yantiv, you have no recourse in Bezdin. Why? Because if you say there's recourse, he might come to write it down. So it has to be built on trust. According to Rabbah, if people can't lend and go to Bezdin, then they won't lend, and therefore there'll be less Simchas Yantiv. Now, a person prefers to take a coat, like we said in the Mishnah, than to run to Bezdin. That's why we take a coat. Very interesting halacha. On the first day of Rosh Hashanah, a person decided to share his meat with other people. In other words, lend them meat. Now, what is the first day of Rosh Hashanah? It could possibly be the last day of the previous year. And therefore, if it's not really a day of Rosh Hashanah, it's the last day of the previous year, then the halacha is anytime you lend somebody something on a year of Shemitah, when the last day occurs, there's no more loan. So therefore, this person does not get back his meat because it was the last day of Shemitah in this case. Or the first day of Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the following year. That is, if the previous year, the previous El only had 29 days, then the first day of Rosh Hashanah is the following year, and he could have recourse. He could demand his money back. So the Gemara says that if we say that the first day of Rosh Hashanah was actually from the previous year, it comes out that it wasn't a Yantif. It was actually a weekday. And if it was a weekday, without this halacha that Shemitah is Meshamet, he would go to Bezdin, because it's not a Yantif according to Rabbi Yosef. But if the first day of Rosh Hashanah is Yantif, then he has no recourse according to Rabbi Yosef. He can't go to Bezdin because it was a loan done on Yantif. So then why does it say that it's Meshamet? We have to say that the pshat is the loiva, the person who took the meat, wants to pay it back. And then the malva, the one who gave the meat, would have to say, you don't have to. He has to say it with those words. I'm Meshamet. Because of Shemitah, you no longer have to pay me. But if you want to, if the person insists, he could take the payment. The halacha is you're not allowed to be magdish a carbon. You're not allowed to say this carbon is a oila on Shabbos and Yantif. However, when it comes to carbon Pesach on Shabbos or carbon Chagiga on Yantif, you're permitted to designate it as a carbon. Since you're allowed to be makrivit, you're allowed to designate it. The halacha is that on Shabbos and Yantiv you can't say, R Eli, I want to donate this amount of money, because it becomes a transaction right then and there. You're not allowed to give truma. It's like a transaction. Trumas ha'maisros. Rabbi Yochanan is going to say that because this carbon Pesach is a chiyuv on today, it's not like Erechin and Trumas ha'maisros. I have to bring it today, so it's permitted to designate it as a carbon Pesach today. Have a wonderful day.